So here we are at Lana Yoga with Dr. Rempa, being our subject with the acupuncture needle, Dr. Chris, Micah. Here we have our very important Russian poetry books by Elena, which support the whole experiment. A good ground connection, which we found was important before. And then there's a tiny needle, which is very small, as we can see in Dr. Chris's hand. So that is a really tiny antenna compared with the normal length of acupuncture needles, and it's got the nice hook, so thank you, Japan, for doing that.
But it does go all the way through the epidermis.
Yes, unless you're an elephant. Then it doesn't go through the pachydermis.
Right.
Sorry about the bad joke. So you can see our baseline is about 7 volts. And now, Chris, maybe you could turn on the PyraLight pad and place it on his abdomen. See what happens. Okay, so yeah, got done. Let's see if we get consistent results. Yeah, so now we're up to about 50 volts. And if you maybe move it down the body to the leg or something like that. Let's see what's going on there. So, yeah, 30, 35, 40. So, consistent results as before. The most, the higher, the Manipura chakra in the power center is exactly where we get the most response from the B-fat, the body VT. Okay. It looks like we're not getting quite consistent connection. Okay, that's fine. Alright, now the next step is we'll take, if you take that away, Chris, and disconnect. Now, right now I'm going to do an experiment with the nasal light. This is a standard rhinitis device that's used for oxygenating the blood and therefore upregulating mitochondria, and particularly beneficial with the Neurolight, but we use it independently. And if you would, let's turn it on, and then plug in here. Alright, and before we start, Grandpa's going to place it in her nose. Grandpa?
I'll put this in.
Okay. And let's see what's going on. So, we're about to start running now. And you can see there's actually zero effect from that. Okay. Now, we're going to connect, maybe you can do this, Chris. If you come here, what I want you to do is...
I got it.
Plug it in there, yeah.
Saw that one coming.
Yeah. Okay, and then we just turn on the PyraLight. And let's check that. Yeah, you can see flashing red. Do you feel it, Rempa?
A little.
Okay. Okay. So, look at that. 45 volts.
I feel something over here in my hand.
Yeah. So now, with that, even with the pad, you can see how far the pad is away. Excuse me, Rempa. So even if I move the pad away, the pulse nasal light is giving a big response. Now, we're going to put the pad simultaneously. 68 volts, okay. So what's that telling me is that the unpulsed nasal light, which is running at 5 milliwatts, is having zero BFET effect. But my suspicion was if I pulse it in the same way that the PyraLight's pulsing, it would generate the BFET effect, in other words, induce a voltage internally. And the nice thing about that is it's running at 15% of power. So we have about 0.6 milliwatts, which means we can run it safely. You know, this thing runs for 30 minutes maximum. We can run this for at least 8 times. Now part 2 of the experiment. We have the nasal light pulsing, super pulsing from the PyraLight, and we have an induced voltage of 72. It sometimes spikes up to 80, which is a lot more than the 50 volts we saw just with PyraLight pad. And now Chris is going to insert some acupuncture needles to balance out the system. We'll see if it makes a difference.
Okay.
Now you can notice when Chris touches, he's grounding out the signal inside Rampa. And she's grounding it out from the skin. And when he lets go, it goes back to normal reading. So we're just going, after doing a couple of these acupuncture points, we'll see if the body, in body fat, the induced voltage changes. So Chris, why are you choosing these points? I know they're your favourite ones.
These are the general alignment points that we use.
Okay.
Brain reboot.
Uh-huh. Go on into the okay. So let's see what's going on.
Do we have any change?
I think we can. I personally,
Let's need to
start
change.
touching it. Okay, there's another
Actually,
one
it's
going.
the alcohol, so I'm touching it.
Yeah. This shows that you shouldn't drink alcohol and do acupuncture at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to take that. I really take these down.
Okay. All right. So here we have. Now one more. Okay. Well, so far, the voltage is staying in the same range, which we'll just give it a few minutes and see if anything significant changes. So the idea here with doing the ordinary acupuncture as well is to show that, to inquire whether this is an acupuncture effect or not. Because you could argue that even the small needle placed here could be part of the effect. But
generally, acupuncture only shows on an MRI or a CAT scan. It shows brain activity. It doesn't really show any energy change in the body.
Because it's suppressing the limbic system, which is why you get the pain release.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. It's pain release, or it just realigns your chi for an easy way to understand it.
Yes. And in this case, what we're seeing is, so far,
change.
No, 70, it's in the 70s range.
No effect.
So no effect, which is actually really
I really didn't think there would be.
good. Yeah, neither did I, but it's actually really, it's a good thing to have correlation and change one variable and see if it has an effect. So, Rampa, how are you feeling now?
Yes, I feel more energy for my body, my feet, my arm.
Ah, okay, good.
Yes,
So,
very nice.
your body's warming up. So it's
Yes.
actually,
Because
that would be the limbic system calming down and the body going to relaxation. But this particular effect of the very high induced voltage internally is independent of that. So whether the limbic system is more active or less active, we're still getting the same effect. The third and most important part of our experiment. I want to introduce you to Walter, the Water Melon. So say hello, Walter. He's feeling a bit shy. So let's have a look at you, Walter. Walter's slightly challenged because his body is very small. It's reduced down to a little appendix. But you can clearly see his name's Walter. And hello, Walter. Now, we're going to do some tests with you, Walter, if you don't mind, with the laser light and the PyraLight. And here's your acupuncture needle, cunningly placed inside your cranium. So I hope that's not uncomfortable. Alright, Walter, so first job is we are going to switch everything off actually. Okay, so here's the PyraLight pad on its own. And let's go through the same sequence, Chris. If you first of all just put the PyraLight onto Walter, and we'll see what goes on.
Alright. Right across the face.
Yep, close your eyes, Walter. So 40, 44, okay. Now, so we can see that a living system. You're still alive, aren't you, Walter? Yeah, good. You've got water inside you, a lot of it, and water's in the gel state, in other words, the fourth phase of water, or structured water. And so that's conducting, it's particularly conducting when heat is applied. So we know that when infrared is applied to structured water, the spheres, the little spheres of water, move together and they're charged. And that's actually how Gerald Pollack believes that life first started, that the colloid of water was attracted together under the influence of heat. And then finally the membrane started, formed to form cells. So, Walter, I've got a question for you. We're going to take the pad off your head and disconnect it. And then Dr. Chris is going to cunningly connect you to the nasal light and turn it on. And just start it running. Is it running heavily? There you go. Okay, now you're running. And let's see what goes on. Really? Did you plug it in properly? Mm-hmm. Can you see it flashing?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Right, well,
We did off
that's true, isn't it?
we did it off the PyraLight before.
We turned off the PyraLight. So right now, we've got 5 milliwatts, constant voltage going in to your nose. Okay, so the next step is let's just pulse that laser by connecting it to the PyraLight pad. And you can turn off the thing if you want. Okay, so I guess, yep, there you are. So the only thing we're doing now is pulsing it, and you can see the voltage has dropped up to 20, it's moved up to 22 volts, 23 volts. So even though 15% of the power is going into Walter right now, it's going in super pulsed format from the pad. It's the 3 biologically important frequencies, sub-audio frequency. I'm using 2 Hz delta, 8 Hz Schumann, and 40 Hz gamma. So he's having a happy trip now. His brain, left half and right half of the brain is coherent. So he's smiling a bit more, I think.
Take him for high tea later.
Yeah. So there we are. Now, the next thing is if you put the PyraLight pad on top of him, and just like Rampa, his voltage goes up to 55 volts. So very similar effect. The only thing I would say is that the voltage induced is larger in Rampa, and that's probably due to the fact that the actin molecules, which are semiconductor molecules inside the connective tissue and the extracellular matrix, those are more efficient conductors of electricity when it's turned on. So we're turning on an electrical conductivity event inside Walter the Water Melon in a very analogous way to the way we did it in Dr. Rampa. And we'll just undo one step at a time, so maybe first of all take the PyraLight pad off, Chris. And we're currently at 50 odd volts, okay, moving down to 20. And then next, disconnect the nasal, and he's gone right back down to 5. He's still smiling, so I think that's a positive outcome. And Chris, you said it's not a surprise to you that this worked in this way because of the electrical aspect.
Right, as long as we get through the skin of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, anything organic.
So does it
dead or alive should be able to absorb or put off energy.
So is it now okay for me to advertise for sick watermelons to come to you for acupuncture?
Same rates as humans.
That's going to be expensive for them, but he's going to tell his friends. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Walter. Professor Maximus, Dr. Chris. I'd like to introduce you to Larry the Lime. He's a Buddhist. He's very relaxed. Chris pointed out that if a human's needle was bent like that, they would not be very happy, and he's still smiling. So Larry the Lime, thank you for being a participant in our experiment. We're going to go through the same thing. So let's start up here. All right. So you can see the rest case again, just like Walter and Larry seem to be very compatible, about 5 to 6 volts in rest state. And now we'll do the nasal light, which is DC unpulsed driving. And actually, let's have a look at the light coming out. You should pick it up. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that's shining nice and brightly. And this won't hurt a little bit, Larry. Just put it in your nose. Excellent. Good surgery, Chris.
Yeah, I hope so.
You're not allowed to laugh in the operating theatre. Okay, so he's gone up to about 8 volts. So he says, nah, it's about the same. He's not very impressed. Tiny bit.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, because he's acidic.
Right.
So, all right, Mr. Larry, you're now going to have something interesting happen to you. For the first time in your life, you will get the PyraLight nasal stimulation. So here we go. Okay, and we'll just we can.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah. So that's going. Larry's still smiling, and he's up to 20 volts, just like his friend Mr. Walter.
He's a lot smaller.
He's a lot smaller. And his skin is softer. He's not a pachyderm or a waterderm. Okay, so keep relaxed, Larry. The next step is we're going to give you the PyraLight pad.
Sort of.
Sort of. As much as we can. So we're not able to induce much from you because your body's too small, which is very interesting. You're going to sit him on it. Okay.
I'm just so gentle with it.
You just hemorrhaged his brain.
Yeah. Malpractice.
Yeah, your insurance cost just went right up, Chris. Ah, very good, excellent work. So now, in spite of your diminutive stature, Mr. Larry, the line, you get up to 28 volts. So, I think we're seeing consistent results. What would you like to summarize from the 3 experimental animals?
If you're from the American Health Association, I had nothing to do with this.
So tell me what you think went on in the 3 experiments, Dr. Chris.
I actually thought this would be higher because it's a citrus fruit, because of the acidic quality to it.
But the volume that can have an induced charge, the volume of structured water, is way, way smaller.
Right.
And Rampau's bigger even than water.
Right. Well, I would think that it would conduct through the lead better with the acupuncture needle because of the acid in it.
So we could take an apple or something and same size, and I think I agree with you, it's highly likely we'd get the low induced voltage.
It's like any type of fruit that is high in acid, you can run a fan or a light off of it. So
yes.
My idea was if we put an acupuncture needle in it and we were taking a reading off of that, I thought it would spike really high, but we have a consistent result.
Yeah. So unpulsed from the nasal infrared light gives a negligible effect. Pulsed from the PyraLight gives quadrupling effect, movement from 5 to 20. And then the PyraLight, even though his little Larry is little, he got amped up, and in fact he's still going away at 27 volts. So yeah, my sense of what's going on, what the theoretical analysis I would suggest is that we have structured water in all living things. Or are you still alive, Larry? Yeah, he's just in a coma.
Yeah.
He's not dead.
No, he's not.
If he's dead,
he's not a vegetable.
That's a bad one.
I know.
Larry, don't listen to him, he's been rude.
Medical humor.
Yeah, it is. That's what doctors do in the operating theatre.
Yes, absolutely.
They say
That's
really...
how you deal with it.
So Larry, you're under anaesthetic, so don't worry, everything's cool.
Time for your langsectomy.
Don't give him a lipotomy though.
That's what I was going to say next.
Yeah, he doesn't want one of those, otherwise there'd be nothing left. So anyway, he's happy doing that. The bigger fruit, Mr. Walter, could induce a bigger internal voltage, and the human being a very big one. But they're only occurring with pulsed magnetics and pulsed infrared. The laser light is 650, so it's on the border of red infrared nanometers.
You have to consider too with the human though. When you put the acupuncture needle in, you're only piercing the epidermis.
Yeah.
You're not going you're not going past the fascia in the body.
Yeah.
So you're not in the bloodstream. You're not in the most conducted area.
But we're in his bloodstream.
For all intents and purposes.
I hope this is not too painful.
Well, just think, our DNA really isn't that far off.
Yes, Larry, you're highly related to Dr.
If we were
Chris.
on another planet with aliens, he would be the most closely related thing to us.
True. Okay, so Larry, this is your friend Dr. Chris, your long lost cousin. And thank you very much. I think we are done.
Okay.